Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Well, I played through 6 as the third game in the Pixel Perfect collection that I played through. After I played 1 and 2, it just made sense at the time because I had held off trying to play through the rest of the Pixel Perfect and 6 was the one that just came out. Also, I did do a review on the older mobile version of 6 a couple of years ago. And I do want to know I'm not going to do a full breakdown review here because you can watch my review of Final Fantasy VI by clicking the little card there. And I want you to know Pixel Perfect is 95% the same game. But I do want to talk about where the graphics, sound, and a few gameplay areas are different and my thoughts on them. I should also mention I'm not some sort of Final Fantasy VI purist. I have no nostalgic attachment to this. I did not play this until I was in my 20s, and I never really played through the SNES version that much, so I'm no expert in the original version of this game. But I have played through the PS1 version, and then the old mobile version a year or two ago, so I have played an older build of this game. Anyways, let's talk about the difference in my overall thoughts. The big change is the graphics, and my thoughts is they approach 6 a bit differently and try to be more authentic to the original Super Nintendo than the other ones. The other ones look good and played fine, but at the same time you could always tell when they changed an effect, especially with the NES ones. With 6, the feeling I got was the same thing when I played Sonic Mania. This is the way we want to remember the game rather than what it actually is. The sprite work is awesome, and everything is cleaned up. A little bit of color correction when it comes to Terra's hair being a bit of a lighter shade of green, but that's the only thing I have to really nitpick, other than the fact that the overworld and the first world being a bit too much on the bright side, and I hear it's because they took it off the Game Boy Advance version of the game. The characters run faster, the action is smooth, and it all looks really good. And again, it's more towards an actual 16-bit, so 3D model houses and 3D overworld effects are now muted down to what they would look like coming from a Super Nintendo Mode 7, and I think it looks better for the most part. Some of those 3D houses did look good in the original Steam version, but damn am I glad to be rid of those awful sprites. Yeah, I know it's based off the original artwork, but I think the actual SNES sprites stood on their own and do it a lot better. The only exception is the soap opera scene, which is now fully 3D backgrounds with old school sprites for a bit of a different but pleasant look. Also, voice acting has been put into the opera scenes, meaning real singing, and it's not great. Granted, that's kind of the idea. The plot is Celeste, who is a former general and knight and not an opera star singer, only has a few hours to really get her part down and no time to rehearse, and is doing her best to play the part so she can get kidnapped by a crazy stalker so she can turn around and steal his airship. So the fact that the singing isn't great, I think it's supposed to sound that way. As far as the story goes, no major changes in the story. A quick recap for those who didn't watch my original and haven't played through 6. The first half of the game centers around a bunch of rebels called the Returners, fighting against an evil emperor and his henchman, a clown named Kefka. The protagonists are okay, but the game does suffer from too many cooks, or I should say characters in the kitchen. So not much development goes into all of them, as none of them really get as fully fleshed out as they should. But that said, the game's villain, Kefka, oh boy does he get fleshed out with the backstory. He has his reasons for doing that, and he has a very twisted ideology too. That ideology is one of complete nihilism, which helps separates him from each of the main characters. Each of the main characters all have something they are suffering from, either a past trauma or something going on in the present that is impeding their growth as a character, and they do have to overcome it. Taking on nihilistic mentality of Kefka would completely stop that growth. Even more so in the game's second half, as the heroes end up screwing the pooch and letting Kefka take over the world. The world is now in ruin and dying, and the heroes have been scattered to the wind. The second part starts off with a possible attempted suicide by the character you take over in the second part, Celeste. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to record it this time because I actually saved Sid. But when she discovers that hope does exist, she takes action and reunites all the heroes and a few more characters to stand against Kefka and find hope in this dying world. Again, the characters themselves aren't the strongest. There's too many of them to really focus on. But with villains like Kefka, tying them together, they still come off as strong despite how lean their development is for a lot of the characters. Anyways, going on to the gameplay. The good news is, again, the gameplay is faster. You can control the character's speed, and they all go fairly fast, even without the sprint shoes equipped. And this makes the game feel a lot smoother, and the battles feel like they're supposed to with an actually good user interface. Feels more like an actual console game. Overall, the gameplay feels like it's supposed to. Now on to some bad news. Final Fantasy VI old Steam versions had a lot of extras, including extra summons and abilities. Those are gone. I'm not angry at the removing of the pixel perfect, as they're supposed to go back to the original 16-bit versions as far as the gameplay and balancing. That said, I'm angry at the fact that the old Steam versions have been taken down. Like I said, these are the original Star Wars trilogy. I don't mind that there's a dozen different versions of the original Star Wars trilogy. What I mind is they always take down the older versions to make way for the newer, making it harder or impossible to find the older versions to watch and even compare. And that's what Square Enix did with 6. Don't get me wrong, Pixel Perfect version is the superior version of 6, but I don't see where it would have been a crime to keep the old version on the Steam store, warts and all. And their removal means you have to play a harder version of the game, as Pixel Perfect is quite a bit harder, and it's not as incredibly easy to break during the second part, where you can just basically do a few side quests, kill a few cactuars, and you can have anyone in your party throwing around Ultima spells like they're growing on trees. It's awesome. You can still do that in the Pixel Perfect, but the original, you got this cactuar summon reward, and the cactuars appeared more often and were easier to kill. And then, of course, there's the music. All the music has been re-recorded with full orchestra theme and remix, and it all sounds really great. From Terra's theme, even the World of Ruin theme sounds awesome. I loved all the remixes. Overall, the Pixel Perfect version of 6 is one of the best out there and best version of 6 to play. If you're new to old school Final Fantasy and want to know where to begin, I say begin with Final Fantasy VI. It's the easiest one to get into, best graphics, and it's so ridiculously easy to break. It's perfect for a newbie. It's just that the older mobile version was a little bit easier to break. Best Final Fantasy, however, no. I think you're looking for a deep and challenging experience. You're better off with 5. I think 4 had a better narrative. And personally, to me, the best overall Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy IX, which I hope to review sometime this year or next, depending on my time. Anyways, let me guys know what you thought about Final Fantasy 6 in the comments down below. Hope to see you guys soon. Bye!